Shoulder pain. Today we are going to take a deep dive into how to fix it and how to overcome upper cross syndrome, which is a deformed posture in the upper body that is probably a leading cause of shoulder pain. I've got some notes here because it's going to be a big show. I'm going to give you a little bit of a backstory about my shoulder pain issues and RADs. We're going to talk about cause and effect. We're going to talk about body positioning and setup and how you can set up your body for avoiding shoulder pain and problems. We're going to talk about what happens to the body when you sustain an injury and what's really important to take home from that. We're going to talk about an inverse relationship and how you need to, sorry, I forgot to mute that, and how you need to understand the mechanism of healing if you are experiencing shoulder pain. All that and more coming up right after this. We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.
Hey, in case we haven't met, my name's Rad Burmeister. This is my brother Yanni Burmeister, and we are the co-founders of Unity Gym and the co-creators of the Foundation Movement System, where we teach you how to nourish and move instead of diet and exercise. And today we got a big show because this is a hot topic. It's something that so many people email us or contact us about. It's a massive, massive issue if you sit down at a desk for your work, which is the majority of the people in the Western world. And something that if you don't understand how to fix is going to cause you major, major problems as you age. And of course, we are talking about upper cross syndrome here.
You can give a shout out to Michael. You only really need to Michael, read the highlighted areas.
So Michael Bergreen from the Movement Mastermind, one of our online tribe members, has shouted out. He's saying he's read the Strength Essentials mini course, and in the mini course we talk about upper cross syndrome. And he's wondering if the FMS program alone will make the upper cross syndrome go away. He worked with a PT who gave him a couple of exercises to focus on, but only stretching and one scapular retraction move. And it's inspired. He's asked if we're inspired to make a video for him. So we are, mate.
Here we are. You're going to have to be eternally grateful, Michael. No, it's a great question, and I'm really excited to make this show because I've had major problems with upper cross syndrome in my life, and I'm going to fill you in on a little bit of a backstory. But your question that came in was one, and then we got another one. We've got this massive flash sale going on right now, and part of probably 2 hours every day I'm answering emails from people who are inquiring about the programs that are on sale and wondering if it's right for them. And I've had a number of people come in asking me who are also suffering shoulder problems. It's so common, and we're going to talk a little bit about why in a sec. But I just thought we've got to do this show, and we weren't planning on doing a big show today because we've got the sale going and we've got so much work to do to respond to people's emails and things like that. But we always feel like we can deliver a lot more value doing a show like this. First, before we get started, we got hooked up yesterday, and we're not drinking beer here in celebration for the New South Wales Blues winning the State of Origin. We're drinking Remedy kombucha because the dudes came in yesterday and hooked us up. We have a major problem in this gym, which is that we sell Remedy kombucha to our tribe, and unfortunately Rad drinks most of it, and it costs us a lot of money. And I was having this conversation with the guys yesterday, and they were like, "Oh my God, tell us, and we'll hook you up, man." And they gave us a couple of free boxes of kombucha. So we are so super grateful. If you haven't tried Remedy kombucha, it's amazing, and we use it legit to help people get off alcohol. If you've got a daily beer or wine habit, kombucha is really, really good because it still gives you a little feel. And this is legit. Rad and I brew it ourselves at home. It gives you a feel like you're drinking something that's fizzy, and it gives you a little bit of, it just gives you that sensation. There's a few different habit loops that are occurring when you're addicted to drinking alcohol. And it replaces two of them. It obviously doesn't replace the alcohol, the afternoon buzz you get from beer, but it certainly replaces the habit loop of having a drink when you get home or drink with dinner. And it's only about 18 calories. It's basically zero sugar. So it's about a fifth of the calories you get from a beer, which is so much better for you. And it's good for your gut. So anyway, now, the other question I had come in was from a gentleman called Craig Jenkins. Now, he isn't part of the Movement Mastermind tribe just yet, but he is really interested in our content, and he's really interested in a few of our programs, and he's having shoulder problems as well. And his email to me yesterday highlighted what one of the biggest problems are that I spoke about in an email that I sent out probably yesterday or this morning, about the problem of compartmentalizing our issues and compartmentalizing our goals. You are really enjoying that.
I'm loving
that remedy. So what I want to talk about here first of all is, and then I'll fill you in on a bit of a backstory about why this is so close to us. When we compartmentalize our goals and our issues, we come at it from a very limited standpoint and viewpoint. And the reality is that it's not just one thing that usually creates a problem. There are a myriad of different lifestyle factors that come into play, even that cause a simple thing like shoulder impingement when you're bench pressing. And that's literally what Craig Jenkins has got. Now, in Craig's personal experience, the problem started with impingement when he was bench pressing. He's gone to dumbbells. He's been able to work through that for a while, still pressing, but his weights are going backwards, not forwards, and now he's suffering quite severe low back pain, which is very, very common when we have problems and restrictions in the shoulder, and I'll explain why, because that might seem a bit weird. They're at other ends of your body. When we have compromised posture, especially upper cross syndrome, which is a shortening and a contracting of the pec muscles and the internal rotators of the shoulder, and a weakening of the external rotators and retractors of the shoulder, then we end up hypermobilized in the lower back, because if you think about, part of the ability to press free from pain is thoracic extension and being able to flex the shoulder as much as possible. And when we're restricted in shoulder flexion and we're restricted in thoracic extension, we end up hyperextending in the lumbar to make up for that. And that puts a lot of excessive pressure on the lumbar spine. Over time, it deforms the lumbar spine, and it can cause lower cross syndrome, which is what Rad has suffered from all his life. And it ends up becoming a really, really big problem. Now, you may already suffer lower cross syndrome. You may suffer tight psoas muscles, tight thoracolumbar fascia, weak abdominals, weak glutes, and that is already putting you in what's referred to as an anterior pelvic tilt, where the top of the pelvis rolls forward, which is what Rad specializes in rehabbing, because he's had to fix it himself. But when you become compromised in the shoulders, it exacerbates that problem and it becomes much worse. So, Craig, we've got you covered here, brother. Even though you're not part of the Movement Mastermind, I'm going to try and kill you with love today and get you into our tribe so that we can work more closely. And at the same time, we're going to discuss Michael's question here and solve his problems as well, because that's what we do. Now, backstory. I said that a little bit about Rad having lower cross syndrome, which is that tightness of the thoracolumbar fascia in the lower back, tightness of the psoas muscles and the rectus femoris in the quads, and then usually followed by a weakness or a weakening of the lower abdominal muscles, the distal portion of the rectus abdominis and the lower abs, and often weak hip external rotators and glute max, so the gluteal muscles, or they may not be firing properly. I have the opposite, upper cross syndrome, and that is where you tend to get very tight in the pecs and you get very weak in the mid-back muscles. Now, it can come from lots of different things. Me personally, it was self-inflicted, and this is probably the most common one, and Rad sort of lived through this and watched me go through this. I grew up a skinny kid. I got into boxing when I was 14 years old. I boxed on and off until I was 30, so a lot of training for boxing. In the peak, roughly 33 hours a week. Now, when you're a boxer, you're encouraged to shrug your shoulders, round your shoulders. One, it protects your chin, because you want to tuck your chin in behind your shoulders, and we use that as a defense mechanism. But two, it also helps to extend your reach. And that's advantageous for a fighter because we want to have as long reach as possible. Problem was, I didn't really understand that you do need to balance that out with specific strength training so that you don't fuck with your posture, pardon my language. And then when I got into my early 20s, I became very self-conscious of my body image, as a lot of people do. I was a very skinny kid, boxing 33 hours a week. All through my teens, I was real skinny. Like, in comparison to Rad back then, he made me look small. I know it's flipped around now. But I became very self-conscious, and so my natural instinct was to go to the gym, hit the weights room, and what do guys do in their 20s? They do lots of bicep curl and lots of bench press, and that's it. I think I threw in a little bit of lat pull down, which surprisingly you would think would help counteract it, but it doesn't, because the lats internally rotate the shoulder as well. So all of those exercises played a huge role in really taking my already existing bad posture, upper cross syndrome, because I'd adapted to my boxing stance from doing it for so long. That just exacerbated the problem. Now, after a while, I became, my mirror muscles, my biceps, my pecs, my lats were big enough, and I started to think, damn, I need to build my shoulders and other areas of my body. I still didn't do leg day, because leg day to me just meant gaining more weight, and gaining more weight meant moving up a weight division in boxing. And in amateur boxing, when you're a light heavyweight, which is 78 to 81 kilos, that's okay. Once you go to heavyweight, it's 81 to 91 kilos, which is a 10 kilo weight division. And there's no way I could have fought at 91 kilos, so I would have been around the 84 mark or something like that, 85, and I would have got my head caved in by the bigger boys. So I did not want to put on weight. So legs just was out of the question for me. So I skipped leg day, which is a fundamental error. But I really, really started to hurt my shoulders when I started to try and train the other parts of my body, because as the guys are experiencing here, especially Craig, when you've compromised that posture and you can't flex the shoulder properly, all of the other areas of the body start to break down. It just becomes this systematic, catastrophic decline. Now, Rad's recently hurt his shoulder, and it's from a different reason. His posture is very good, but he just pushed it and he overdid it. And it brings us to the next point that I want to talk about before we hit the gym floor, because this is really important, and you can explain a little bit about this. Rad's been working with arguably one of the best physios in the country here in Australia. He's a good friend of ours. We're very lucky to have access to him. He's heavily involved in athletic performance and working with sporting teams, professional sporting teams. So just tell us a little bit about what Leroy was talking to you about the body sort of reprogramming and overriding systems and the stability mechanisms, like forgetting what their job is. Tell me what you were talking to me about this the other day.
Well, it's something that so many people don't understand with injury, and that is that when you injure your body, especially if you have a really traumatic injury like what I had with a slap tear and a torn supraspinatus, then, all of a sudden the body goes through this trauma and you have inflammation, you have tears, the body kicks into this healing process and it prioritizes healing. And that's what inflammation really is. Inflammation is the body just flooding blood and nutrients into the area to try and heal it. And as a cause of that, you get restricted movement, because it you start feeling impingement on nerves that you weren't feeling before. So where you might have been able to move your arm like this, which is why when you reduce inflammation with anti-inflammatories or a cortisone injection, you immediately feel a relief, because all of a sudden the inflammation goes down, and instead of you going like this and then hitting a nerve and going, ow, like that, you can start moving it. But the injury is still there. So the problem, the underlying problem is still there.
Yeah, and then there's a reason, I'll just say this, there's a very good reason why your body does that. It locks down. It wants to create an environment that's optimized for healing.
Yeah, that's right.
It wants to restrict movement, because movement risks reopening the tear.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, but then what happens as well as a part of this process, because you stop moving excuse me, my kombucha is causing me to burp.
Yeah, right.
When you stop moving, let's say the shoulder, a really complex joint, the stabilizers, the muscles, the way that everything interacts together to create healthy movement, it starts to forget how to do that, and it doesn't need to at that time. It needs to just keep the shoulder where it is so that it can heal. And then when you start exercising again, you have to reteach the body how to do things that were second nature to it before. And this is where so many people go wrong. So with they rest, the inflammation goes down, and then they just start moving again without any consideration as to reteaching themselves how to move. Because your mind remembers. You think, oh, I know how to push my arm up like that, but the body forgets. And it's something that that you have to retrain.
Yeah, we've got a whole chapter about this in the Strength Essentials. There's a new chapter on the issue intensity continuum. And, you know, I go into detail about this. There's a literal neuromuscular rewiring that occurs to override systems to prevent movement. And then, you know, you have to relearn coming back. The first systems I talk about in the book is the first systems that are affected are the stability systems. And the reason why really is because we don't spend as much time practicing them. You know, we practice the big phasic movements like pressing, pulling, squatting, bending, but we don't practice hip abduction, shoulder external and internal rotation nearly as much, you know. And so we don't have as strong neurological pathways there. They get broken down and forgotten much quicker. And so what Rad's saying there is so true, and it really is the reason why most people don't rehab properly. Like if at best you go see a good physio and they give you some baseline exercises, they help with that issue intensity continuum to choose the right entry point for you. But most likely you were training, and if you haven't seen our content on the issue intensity continuum, you've either got to buy the Strength Essentials course, which you should do anyway, or go back and watch some of the YouTube videos where we talk about it. You know, you're training at a 7 to 10. Most people do on the scale of intensity. And you injure yourself, and your physio takes you back to a 1 or a 2 to enter you back into exercise to do something that's going to help rewire that movement. And once you feel pain-free, you jump from a 1, 2, or 3 that they've got you to back to your 7 or 10. And you miss out on all this progressive overload in between there that's critical to your recovery. And that's what most of us do. We want to get back to where we were training before as quickly as possible. We're impatient naturally, and we stuff up our rehab. So what happens at that point? Well, the big muscles on the outside of the body will eventually, if you build enough strength and you have enough repetition, they will learn to work around your issue. And over time, you may even forget about the issue because your body's adapted and your big muscles have developed enough stability and strength to compensate for the underlying weakness there, and you sort of forget about it. But the issue's never really quite resolved, right?
Yeah.
And then you'll eventually do something that tests you and you go, oh, fuck, there's that shoulder pain again that I had ages ago. Why is that coming up? Well, it was never really actually fixed. It's just that you mastered or learnt to train around it. And look, a lot of people get away with that for a long time. Eventually, especially when you start to really, really follow the concepts of progressive overload, which we talk about in that Strength Essentials book, and start to add layers of exercise complexity onto your training, like calisthenics. You know, we experience, I say we because Richie's behind the camera, Rad, myself, experienced this hugely when we started to practice hand balancing. Our shoulders were okay lifting heavy bench press, doing heavy pull-ups, but the moment that we took it into like quite extreme flexion under load, and we were spending a lot of time up there all day doing our hand balancing drills, we started to uncover all those old shoulder injuries that were there and all those instabilities and weaknesses, you know. Now, what we want to talk about now very quickly before we get out onto
We're going to have to make this a two-parter, man.
You think so?
We're out of time. There's no way we're going to get through all of that. Yeah, we've got multiple points on the back of this. We're going to have to continue this tomorrow.
Yeah, okay. All right, cool. Well, I'm happy to do that. We try to keep these shows as short and sweet as possible because we don't want to overwhelm you guys. So, well, what should we finish with? Should we go out on the gym floor and demonstrate something, or should we leave that till tomorrow?
Leave it till tomorrow. I mean, the thing that we can finish with is if you bring it back with what you started talking about, which is everything that you've just described and we've talked about. It talks about compartmentalizing issues versus looking at the body as a whole.
Oh, yeah.
And the truth is that where people really get it wrong with their training is thinking that they can deal with one issue just as it's presented and that will fix them. And the average punter the average punter doesn't even go to the gym, because if you look at the statistics of how many people have a gym membership, and then how many people actually go to their gym membership, and then how many people actually go regularly. Don't quote me on this, but we went through these statistics recently, and I think it was something like 4% of the Western world goes to the gym regularly.
Yep.
It's such a small number. So the average person, what they're doing is they're going through life with...
No, that's exercising regularly.
That's
not going to the gym.
exercising regularly.
Yeah.
So the average person is not exercising regularly enough to make a big impact on their body. And so what happens is people wait until they experience a pain that's so bad that they can't go through life normally anymore. And then they go to see an expert, like a physiotherapist or a chiropractor, and they get a treatment, and they get given a couple of little exercises that are going to potentially get them just out of pain, at least. And most people don't even do the rehabilitation exercises. Of those who do, they probably get them done and then stop doing them. But all you've done is fixed one element of a systematic breakdown in your body.
Yeah.
And you, like, even again, if you're experiencing upper cross syndrome and you're getting pain in your upper back, that can so easily move down into your lower back eventually, because the relationship of what happens when your shoulders are rounded forward like this, your pelvis has to adjust to allow you to stay balanced when you stand up.
Yep.
And so you might fix this, but then you've still got a problem down here.
Yep.
So to wrap this up, what we should bring it back to is, if you really want to make your body thrive, because I guarantee you this, if you're experiencing some problem in your body and you only deal with that problem, it's only a matter of time before something else comes out, and then something else, and then what your life becomes is, it's just this series of dealing with
Chasing your
one
tail.
problem at a time and chasing your tail, and you're never thriving. You're never truly thriving. And what you can experience, what most people experience, is up until the age of about 30, most people report that they don't really experience problems that that cause them to suffer too much. But after the age of 30, almost everyone that I've ever spoken to, actually I don't think I've ever spoken to anyone that doesn't report this, your health starts to decline.
Yeah.
And that's because our bodies are designed in a way where up until about 30, 35, we repair ourselves and continually get stronger without even really doing any work. But after the age of about 30, 35, it's different for men and women, you start to decline. And that rising of health and strength goes the other way. Now you start to lose health and strength. And it doesn't have to be that way. You can turn it around, but it starts with not compartmentalizing your issues, and that starts with doing a program that deals with the whole body.
Yeah.
And that's what our programs do.
That's unification of strength and flexibility, and also nourishment of the body. So eating and nourishing your body in a manner that is sustainable long term, but also supports and furnishes the amount of exercise that you're doing and training that you're doing. Because remember, what goes into your body causes chemical reactions throughout the entire body, and it more so than you can possibly imagine. And those chemical reactions have the power and potential to stiffen you up or make you relax and loosen up. They have the power to optimize even brain function. There's a direct relationship between brain and gut. And you can't train at a really high intensity and put shit in your body. You can't work out every day and not stretch. You know, like, there is so much evidence to prove this now. There's this notion that if you become flexible, you also become weak, or if you become strong, you also become tight, and that's just the way it is. It's total bullshit. And you will not experience an optimized body until you find harmony and unification between those principles. And the three key principles that we've found make the biggest impact is strength, flexibility, and nourishment. And until you look at it from that macro level, you're going to keep compartmentalizing all of these issues, and you're going to keep making the same mistakes that the majority of people make and remain a statistic, which is that you just go around on the merry-go-round and don't ever actually achieve anything phenomenal with your body. Now, I guarantee you that if the two guys sitting here can overcome spinal fractures, major shoulder problems, knee reconstructions, all of this horrible stuff, you know, Richie just overcome being Richie. Like, you guys can do anything. You can do anything is possible. Anything is possible. And I just hope that we can inspire you. So Quickly, Michael, to answer your question, absolutely the foundation movement system alone will make a huge impact on your body, on your upper cross syndrome. The program was designed specifically, especially the foundations program, to fix my upper cross syndrome and to fix Rad's lower cross syndrome. So it has you covered. That's why we have that marriage between strength and flexibility. We call it Unify. We were inspired to make a video for you, brother. So
make sure you guys watch tomorrow, though, because tomorrow we're going to go through all of.
Tomorrow we're going to do the practical.
Yep.
We're going to do the practical. This was the theory. This was the mindset. Tomorrow we're going to dive straight into the practical, and I'm also going to talk about the inverse relationship between your issue, the intensity you train, the complexity and selection of the exercises you choose during that process, and how much volume that you should be doing on the exercises. So we're going to go real deep into it tomorrow. This is stuff that comes straight from our Strength Essentials course, so you guys are getting it at a very, very discounted price. Big 5-finger discount, free. We'll also talk about how the whole concept of neuromuscular reprogramming works whilst we go out on the gym floor and show you. We'll also show you those body positioning setups for your bench press and pressing exercises to sort of maximize the results you get and minimize the risk of exercise. All that and more coming up tomorrow. Health is about performance, not just body image.
You better be willing to accept what you're going to have to do to get there.
We'll start focusing on movement goals, strength goals, flexibility goals.
When you nail that skill, that's there forever.
The body image goal doesn't get you that
It's
far.
the consistency and frequency that's going to get you there. It's not the intensity.
There's no shortcuts to mastery and movement. Destination doesn't change overnight, but your direction will.
The gym is not the place to beat up the body that you hate. It's the place to build the body that you love.
We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.